Hello, everyone. Happy Monday. I am excited to be here with you talking about a subject really near and dear to my heart. But I'm not going to be the one talking about it. I actually have a beautiful guest speaker who I've been blessed to get to know over the last 6 months, I would say. Her name is Alison McLean. McLean? How do you say that?
McLean.
McLean, obviously. What am I saying? I think I have 100% record of getting all my guest speakers' name or last name somehow messed up.
It's my husband's name, and I got it wrong in the beginning too, so no worries.
Okay, there you go.
You would correct me, and I'm like, oops.
It's like I have my husband's last name, and I am sure to any French-speaking person, I am butchering the name, but well, I do my best. So this is a very interesting and very important conversation that I wanted to bring into the podcast, and I couldn't think of a better person to do this with than you, Alison. And this is about how to handle big health diagnoses. And I have a person who went through it herself. She got diagnosed. She'll tell us more, but she got a big diagnosis, and she not only handled that very well. Maybe not initially, we'll talk about it. Yeah. But she's also utilized this as a form of motivating herself to continue to do the work that she is doing. Alison is a wellness entrepreneur business coach. She's a physical therapist, a yoga therapist, massage therapist, and a coach. You've got all the therapists with you. And for the last decades, she's helped hundreds of students overcome injury and pain and achieve their health goals. She has a very successful and profitable physical therapy and wellness clinic, while she was also leading classes, workshops, and yoga trainings. Do you still do some of that?
Some of them.
Yeah.
But we can talk about that too.
Here's another name that I'm going to not say properly, but she was diagnosed with Lynch syndrome.
Yeah, you got it. Lynch syndrome. Mm-hmm.
A genetic mutation that puts her at high risk of several different types of cancer. And a couple of months after that diagnosis, she actually got her first cancer screen, and she was diagnosed with rectal cancer. Mm-hmm. So this caused her to reevaluate her own business, sustainability of life that she had going on, and all of your life in this wellness industry, as I think you understood it at the time. Mm-hmm. She now has the passion to help other wellness entrepreneurs grow their business in a sustainable way while still creating profit and caring for their own health first and foremost. Welcome to the podcast, Alison. I cannot wait for people to hear your story. How are you?
Hey, I'm excellent. Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
I did a peer coaching session with you because Alison and I are coached by the same coach, and I fell in love with your story and the way in which you talk about it. And I really, truly wanted. I was so happy when you raised your hand and said, I'll speak. Mm-hmm. And that you were wanting to be vulnerable. Not everybody wants to talk about their health and their thinking. And so, yeah, that's so I'm so grateful that you are wanting to do this. So why don't we start by you telling us a little bit, something I didn't share here in your bio about yourself, like where you're at right now in life.
Sure. Yeah.
And then we'll dive in.
Well, I was, as mentioned in that bio, was that I was profitable and I was successful, but what wasn't mentioned in that was that my schedule was crazy. Like I was teaching yoga classes at 7 a.m., which you had to be in the studio by 6:30 sometimes. Sometimes I was teaching 7:30 p.m. yoga classes, weekend yoga teacher trainings, weekend workshops. So it was 7 days a week, round the clock. And for a while and during that time I was diagnosed with both Lynch syndrome and then rectal cancer. And for a while, when I first got diagnosed, it really hit me hard, not from the standpoint of cancer, ironically, because I'd grown up most of my life seeing many family members being diagnosed with multiple cancers. It's kind of the Lynch syndrome pattern. and I'd seen them successfully overcome cancer. So I knew that I would be okay deep down in my bones. But what hit me the most was like how I put a lot of blame on myself and shame myself, because I was like, look at my schedule. I'm a health and wellness practitioner and I'm not well. Like, how did I get here? And I started layering shame and blame on myself. And it really led in combination with my schedule. That time I was very close or at burnout, where I just felt really exhausted and defeated. And I had to climb myself out of that hole, essentially. But now I'm great. Last year I had one of the best years yet. I really embodied what I teach. I worked a lot less, so no evenings. I didn't teach any public classes, which was hard because I do love them. But now I have a new system where I'm doing them once in a while, not on the weekends. So I'm happy about that. And I made a lot more money. So if you're feeling defeated, just know that there's hope. You can turn things around. And my health has never felt better too. And I feel like if worst case, I was to get another scary diagnosis, because I continuously go for cancer screens. In fact, I have another one in just a couple months because something did pop up. I will be able to handle it. I know I'll figure it out in a different way than I did before.
This is exactly what I want us to dive in. How do you know that? How do you have this certainty that you will figure it out? For somebody listening who may be being diagnosed, like who may have just gotten a diagnosis, or maybe not themselves, but somebody they love. I find that it's equally traumatizing when somebody you love is diagnosed. But we'll get into that in a moment. I want to unpack a bit what was going on in your life. You like these layers of shame as well. As a wellness practitioner myself, if I can call myself that, a life coach and a former therapist, I would have said, I understand, at least in theory, that we create our circumstances, right? That if you work a lot, chances that you're going to make money, but you're also going to exhaust yourself. And so I can appreciate from your perspective of being a wellness human and really so passionate about wellness, that you overextended yourself to be in all the places. And when you receive this couple of diagnoses, one so close from the other, going back into your steps and thinking, how did I cause this?
Yeah, I was evaluating. Yeah.
Right. And so what will we say to somebody who may be doing that? I know as a woman who experienced miscarriage, I've done this myself, right? Like when you go back and you're like, oh, I should have never gone spinning. I should have never had the green tea. Like you just go back into how can I blame myself for what caused this condition? And so I think you understand now from what I'm getting from what you've said, that wouldn't be how you would handle it. What will you speak of that specific subject before we dive in?
I still evaluate. I think the evaluation is helpful because you're still going to learn something and evolve as human beings, like most of us, especially if we're like seekers or care about health and wellness and our own self-evolution. We are just naturally always wanting to evolve. But the key difference is not using that evaluation against yourself. So it's realizing like, for me, bottom line is we're all humans, and at each moment in time, we know what we know in that moment. And most of us are choosing the best decision in that moment from our highest good for the most part. I mean, and then we're other humans, and sometimes we just want to choose like donuts and have a glass of wine, and that's okay too, and for me, it's also realizing that I'm not perfect and I will make mistakes, and that's part of the human journey as well. So it's evaluating, but also from the place and holding the space for compassion and acceptance and learning and gratitude. Most of all, I used to, for a while, because I'm a yoga teacher, like gratitude I thought was getting a little hypey.
I agree.
So I actually had some resistance against gratitude. But then I started feeling it more in my body as I started coaching with my own practitioners and doing the self-healing work. And I had practitioners that were both on the mental side of things and then also with my own physical body and nervous system. And it was my naturopath, who is just an amazing, compassionate soul and so knowledgeable. And, she would look at my lab values and we would talk about how stress for me personally is like one of the biggest cancer risk reduction things. Like when I'm caring for myself and enjoying life, it's the best cancer prevention ever. But I was honest with her. I was like, I'm not feeling like showing up to my podcast anymore. I feel like a fraud. I feel like an imposter, I told her. And she asked me why. And I said, well, because, I have this cancer and now I have to have surgery and do all these things. And I never imagined myself to be in this place. Like, yes, I saw my relatives going through it, but I thought living the healthy lifestyle that I live, like, I guess I thought it was invincible. And she was like, Alison, she's like, you have to shift your mindset because you're looking at it from the place of like beating yourself up. But I was diagnosed at that first cancer screen with stage 1. And it's a very lucky, like, because often when it converts at that stage, one of my Lynch specialists told me it goes for people with Lynch. Sometimes it can go very quickly at that stage once it converts. And she's like, you were caught at stage 1, and which means I had a surgery, yes, but I didn't need chemo or very invasive treatment intervention. She goes, had you not been doing all that you'd been doing, it could have been stage 3. It could have been so much worse. And when she said that, I almost felt like crying. And then I realized like I could feel that compassion and gratitude for myself. Like, oh yeah, what I did do was working, because it could have been so much worse. And had I not gone to that screen at all, it would have been worse. Like, she's like, you cared enough for yourself to take time out of your day to get the Lynch syndrome diagnosis, to show up for these screens, which, a colonoscopy, for example, that's a whole day thing. Like you're sedated. Sometimes I get multiple tests in one day, so I'm completely put out. And that can be a 1 or a 2 day event, but I block the time in my schedule to do it. And just a couple months ago, they caught another precancerous growth in my colon. And had I not done that, here I would have been diagnosed again in my early 40s. And so it's catching yourself in the moment when you want to beat yourself up for, doing what you did, making a decision and realizing like, why did you make that decision? You probably made it from your highest good. And even if you didn't, if it's a decision that you can learn from, giving yourself compassion and grace and knowing that you can choose differently in the future and just having your own back.
Yeah, because sometimes we make decisions in what I call autopilot, where we're not 100%, like we're sleepwalkers. And so we make a lot of decisions without thinking about them. Like I have done that so many times, especially since becoming a mom, where my husband will be like, why did you put your phone in the fridge? And I'll be like, I don't know. I didn't do it. But if we had a camera and the camera replayed, I definitely put the cell phone in the fridge, right? Where we're just unconsciously doing things. And so sometimes we're unconsciously engaging in perhaps some kind of habits that could lead to a health condition, like overweight, like anxiety, like under eating, like something where we sort of have an idea. It might not be great, but you're not as aware of how often you're doing it, how much of an impact it's having. And I love your approach on still having an evaluation, still noticing like what might have caused me to be here today, but not to use it against yourself, not to put shame or blame, but to say, oh, I didn't know then what I now know.
Yes.
That's when your past is not a burden, but a university, right? Like you just learn.
I love that.
Like, I get it. So I love, I admired how you speak about having gone for another screen and having had precancerous cells And thank God is that you were not having another diagnosis, and that you're like, we're probably about the same age, early 40s. How do you cope on a regular basis knowing that you're this at risk of having cancer without letting this be something that consumes you or that makes you live in fear?
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, there's days that I do. It does consume me, especially if I'm going for a test, or I just have a friend with Lynch syndrome. She's my age. We have a very similar story, and she just got diagnosed. She's stage 2 right now. And it could have been either of us. She's very healthy. And so there are days where it does consume me because I'm a human being, and I allow that at times. I'm like, okay, half hour, 20 minutes, I'm going to like just feel all the feels right now. Or if it's after a test, I might block myself some time to just process it through. If it, if it's an easy test, like a CT scan or some type of imaging where I'm not going to get sedated or anything, I can easily come back to my office and jump right into client sessions. Instead, I might block an hour and two to go for a walk and just get out in the sun. And for me, if I can feel the sun on a walk and be outdoors, that's my happy place. Like I can start to like, I'm here, I'm living right now. I can feel the joy, I can feel the happiness, and I can shift back into the present moment. Because essentially, like if I'm worrying and if it's consuming me, I'm living more in a future or thinking about what happened in the past for me or my relatives or my friends. But if I can drop back into that present moment, then I feel grounded and centered again. And the other thing that's very helpful is having work that I love to do. Like when I'm in my client sessions, or if I'm leading a training or anything like that, like, again, that drops me into the present moment. Like I just, all my focus is on the person or the people in front of me and their questions and what's going on for them and how I can help them, and showing up for a place of service. So that when I have my purpose, it lights me up and I keep going. Like, and I also know, and maybe this is esoteric or too spiritual for some, but I do believe like this is part of the reason that I'm on earth, is to help inspire people this way and help them in some way, to help them keep going and make their lives easier so they're not suffering as much, and they can feel more grace and ease in their own day to day. And that's why I'm here. So I'll be here as long as I'm here to do that work. And that is it, and of course, being a mom and having those moments with my daughter, I just come back to all of that, and that keeps me going forward, and I can easily shift the energy more.
Let me collect my tears and my emotion here. I wrote down, I'm living right now. And let that sink in with every single one of you, whether you're actually sick or if you are like I was in my 20s with perpetual anxiety over becoming sick one day. What a beautiful phrase you used, Alison. And for those who are not seeing this, she actually closed her hand, brought it close to her heart, closed her eyes, and said, I am here, like just affirming, I'm here, I'm alive, I'm living right now. And I think that is such a good phrase to even use when we're freaking out about dying or becoming sick, to bring yourself to the present, anchoring yourself into, but I am healthy today. Mm-hmm. I am here today. I love that. Being a mom too. So how are you handling, like when you brought that up, I'm like, oh yeah, true. Because ever since I became a mom, I want to live a fucking long life.
Yeah, that's what'll get me. If I ever think so I have to go back in the area that was precancerous. I have to go back and just in a month or so and check it up and make sure that there's no additional growth. And that's the one thing that'll get me, is like, I'm going to go back and make sure I'm going back to that test on time, even though it's an inconvenience and even though it'll trigger me, because I want to be here for my daughter. If I think about my daughter and I'm not here, that's what'll get me. But so sometimes I do practical things. Like what really helped ease my mind was Sean, my husband and I, we went and we got a trust and we did all the legal things. So if something ever were to happen to me, she'd be cared for. And we set up a process, like if something happened to me, if something happened to the both of us, like, and family, I know I'd had uncomfortable conversations with my family members to let them know of our process. And so I know, that she will be cared for. There's people here that will care and love for her and love her. And also, like, I think Kaylee and I, that's her name, we talk about the work I do all the time. She's always asking me about my patients. Just last night, she was like, she wanted something. Oh, what did she want? Oh, she wanted to sew this blanket that she has. That's fraying, and it's just it's frayed so much you can't attach the ends. And I was trying to describe this to her and tell her how it's so beneficial for it to how it is right now. And she was like, "Well, mommy, I know you have some really talented patients. Can you just, or clients, can you just ask them to do it?" Like, she's very ambitious. And so we talk about my work all the time, and she's been on my podcast, and sometimes she wants to record videos together. And so I feel like the work I'm leaving behind is a legacy, if you will, that it's a way that I will talk to her. I can teach her. I can always be with her. She can always listen to me, and get insights and awakenings or knowledge anytime she chooses if I'm not here, because, I've grown to love marketing these days. So I am just everywhere. She can find me. She can find me anywhere.
Yeah. And let's not even talk about that, because it's making me emotional, and you're healthy. You're perfectly healthy right now. So there's no need. But I do think this is so important. Yes. Because when we receive a diagnosis, I think our mind goes into panic of what if worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that we then start thinking is what would hurt? Who would hurt? Right.
Yes.
And so they're running through, oh my God, my son without me. Poor baby, what would he do? He adores me. I am the person that puts him to sleep, and where he goes when he has a boo-boo, so when the mind goes into like more dramatic places to make it be more painful. So tell me, why did you say so confidently, okay, should I get another diagnosis? I know I would be okay, one, and I know I would handle it better. Let me peek into that brain, because this is what I want the audience to walk away with. If they are listening to us, that they get something that they're like, I'm gonna do like Alison does.
Yeah, well, it is. It's like some of those practical steps. It's like what they say, when you have a strong foundation or stability, then you can let go. Yeah. So some of that foundation and stuff, like once I said it, I usually don't think about it as much. So having like some of the practical steps in place allows me to let go. So I don't think about it so much. And so then I focus on the day to day in the present moment. So then if I go to a test, like I'm there at the test, I notice what I'm feeling in my body when I'm getting the results. Like I notice what I'm feeling in my body, and I can just be present and grounded, and I'll just take it day by day. I'm not saying that all the days might be comfortable and rainbows and daisies and unicorns, but I know that I can just take a step at a time. And the other thing that I know that we'll be able to get through with a little bit more grace possibly is because my schedule is a lot better, first of all. So I'll have more energy and resources just for my own self to recover with more ease. I came back in my previous surgeries, I came back way too early, too fast. And so I can give myself the time and space to heal. Plus now I have so many more resources. I've just like with the practitioners I've worked with, I can reach out to any of them. And currently the coaches and practitioners I'm working with, like, I feel like my nervous system is in a different place. My mental space is in a different place. So all of this just give me a lot more tools and resources to just be able to take it day by day. And plus, like, you know, I'm trying to think of how to word this, because it's, when you practice anything, when you do something once, then you know what to expect for the future. Like, I've gone through it once, so I kind of know there's
You've walked the
sense of,
steps, yes.
yeah, there's a sense of predictability in some of the steps. Like, of course, there's always going to be the unknowns of how your body might respond or a treatment intervention might respond, but there's an essence of, okay, like, I know the routine. I know, I love my team where I am at here, the Western medicine team that I have, my oncologist and that whole staff, they're amazing. So I feel supported by them. So
You
maybe
trust them. You
yeah,
trust
that
your
is
team.
like a great takeaway, is like, if you're, because I was in another medical team when I was first diagnosed with Lynch, and they weren't Lynch specialists. They didn't really understand the diagnosis. They didn't have a team to support it that way. And I felt like I was doing a lot of the research, which was a stress and a trigger and a burden. But then when I got in a team where they're like, oh yes, this is what we do, these are the steps, I was like, oh, I felt a sense of relief. So, get a team, get support, get resources, and give yourself the luxury of space.
Now, I want to know, you've mentioned now a couple of times your nervous system is better. And
Yeah.
I really picked up on that, because what I know from being a mindset coach, former therapist, is that when we are not healthy physically, not very many of us think of how to regulate the nervous system so that we can heal. Do you have anything to tell us what you've done that's helped you regulate, and like maybe even help our audience make that connection?
Yeah. Yeah, it's I actually have a couple podcasts on it. It's like understanding your stress triggers, so when you're in a stress response. Because I was so even though I'm a yoga teacher and physical therapist and massage therapist, I really had a hard time feeling into my own body, and which is a whole other story. But so for me, it was learning how to get into my own body and understand when I was triggered into a stress response and why, and feel it, and notice what was happening in my mind. And sometimes they were so intertangled that, like, what I was feeling and what I was thinking, I couldn't pull it apart. I couldn't even differentiate or discern really what was going on. So I used some simple breath techniques to help, such as just a lengthened exhale. So there's research on this, like the polyvagal response. This is just one thing about how some of the work of Stephen Porges really resonates, of how the lengthened exhale. So if you inhale for a count of 3, for example, then you exhale for a count of 6. You don't have to be precise. Sometimes I just, like in the car, I just take a long, deep sigh out. I can feel the shift if I do it enough, where I can sense that I'm shifting the nervous. It's like moving from more of a stress-based response to more down regulating it, as they would say. So that's one simple thing I do. The other simple thing is just when I got to the point where I can, Tara Brach calls this, I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's a Buddhist meditator, psychologist.
Yeah, I love one of her books. It's been my favorite book, on radical acceptance.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So she calls it the sacred pause, because sometimes in the past I was such in like scarcity and hustle mindset, like scarcity of time, scarcity of maybe resources when I was first starting my business or financial. I was always rushing. And so I was pretty much in a stress response for most of my day. And I never slowed down enough to like untangle my mind of what I was thinking or what I was feeling. But as Tara Brach said, is like, if you can give yourself that sacred pause of just slowing and feeling into the body, tapping into the breath and doing that lengthened exhale, then it was enough to slow my mind down, where I was like, oh, this is what I'm thinking right now. And actually, I have a choice right now in this moment. How do I want to think? Or how do I want to show up? Or what do I want to feel? And that's pretty much where the work started for me.
So taking a pause, noticing how you're feeling. I noticed that you also said that about going into a doctor's appointment or for a test or after, noticing how you're feeling. And I call this sitting in the mud in my own practice,
Oh, yeah.
which is like, oh, chest hurts. And I just sit in the mud, like, to feel that feeling, not to correct it or modify it, but to just like grow my awareness. Oh, body's chest is tense, not even saying I'm tense. And then the breathing, I absolutely love it. We underestimate this incredible tool that we carry with us everywhere we go, which will always have the ability to calm you down and ground you. And that's your own breath. And it costs you nothing. And it's just really remembering to use it. Alison, I know you have limited time, so I want to jump into what will you be telling somebody who may be listening to us, who may have just been diagnosed? That's the reason they're listening to this episode. They like the title and they're like, whoa, that's me. What sort of words of wisdom will you have to add to somebody who's been diagnosed with a big diagnosis? It doesn't have to be cancer. It could be MS, it could be Alzheimer's, it could be anything that you're feeling like, I'm having a hard time digesting this label and what this might mean. And they might be in blaming mode or simply just fear mode. Like, what does that mean to me? Other than coming into the present and like really focusing on lowering stress in their body and in their mind. If you could remember what you've done, if you could sort of bring it back to like what has been efficient in helping you like be as accepting as you really sound and are of your own diagnosis and the potential of becoming sick again. You speak of it like you were talking about there being rain. If there's rain again, I'll just grab the umbrella and
That's how I feel. Yeah, exactly. It is. But because we can't control, that some things are really outside of our control, even though we do our best. And so sometimes it is just sitting in the mud for a bit and reaching out to friends and allowing them to support you. So being open to receiving that support, which sometimes is hard for us. And then when you're coming out of the mud and accepting that support from people that do care for you, then it's like, okay, what will inspire me? What will motivate me? What is a plan that feels good in my body? Like, how can I go forward with hope? How can I go forward with inspiration? And at the same time, still allow myself to be in the mud sometimes when it's appropriate to be in the mud, or if you have an off day or a funk in a moment, and honoring that, but also having a process to shift yourself out of the mud. So I think sometimes we don't want to get into the mud because we're afraid we'll get stuck in the mud, But if you have practitioners or a process, then you can be in the mud and you have a way out of the mud. And so for me, that's it. Like, I know, okay, I can go into a test and get a result that I might not want to hear and know that the path might not be my ideal path and there might be a struggle, and I can be in the mud and cry over that. And I know I'll be able to get myself out of the mud. I think that's it.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
What do you think will be good for somebody who is a warrior? And so their brain is like, yes, great, but what if? And their brain is like really fighting them and coming back to what is happening because they're so preoccupied with worst case scenarios. Their brain is like there. And another question I had for you is, did you have a coach while you were going through this diagnosis, and how helpful was that for you if you did have one? So question number one.
I had a team.
You had a team. I love it.
I pulled off. I mean, if you can be a warrior and fight for yourself. And that's how I do feel like I showed up as a warrior. So I had a naturopath, acupuncturist. I had my Western medicine team who I loved. I finally got a good team. I had a coach, a mental practitioner, who was also a trauma based therapist too. So I could like process the triggers. And that's when I first started this connection of learning to feel what I'm feeling in my body. and connect it to my thoughts and my nervous system. But also I utilized my yoga teacher training, like the years of my yoga teacher trainings and some of that nervous system work. And so I had a yoga therapist I met with, talking about receiving support from friends. One of my longtime mentors reached out to me and she's like, I heard about your diagnosis and I want to offer you sessions. And I was like, we talked and she's like, this is my gift for you. This is my purpose in the world. And I accepted it. And that helped me learn a lot of techniques to feel into my nervous system, and a lot of tools and resources that I could bring to appointments. And they call it scan anxiety, scan, and I can't even put it together, but they smush it into one word, whatever that is. Like I had a lot of that. And so learning how to work through all that with those tools was very helpful. About the fear base. Yeah. So for me, I just have to, because the brain can go there because we're human. We're wired for survival.
It is going to go there. Let's be honest. It's going to go there.
Yeah. And especially because I'm in some Lynch syndrome Facebook groups. So you might get into some groups like with your diagnosis, which is great to have a community. However, sometimes it can fuel that fear base because a lot of people are in the mud in those groups. And so for me, I will only go into my Lynch syndrome group when I'm in a strong place. And if I'm searching out a key question, or if I really want to connect with someone or people for a certain reason. Otherwise, that can really pull me into the mud, I found personally. However, there's great people in those groups. So it's recognizing, like for you, what might help you and what might kind of pull you in the direction of being more fear-based, because you're like, I don't see the posts in that groups because you're constantly seeing people getting diagnosed, like daily. And that's not something I want to see, because it is a reality, but I don't need to be reminded of that. Like, no. So I ask myself, like, does this serve me? Is this helpful? And then I'm like, no, it's not helpful for me to know that every day. I'll connect with these people when I want to connect or for a specific purpose. But what I did do is in September of last year, there was a Lynch syndrome event where a nonprofit organization called Live and Kickin', they flew a bunch of us out there. I taught yoga for it. It was amazing. And I tell you, that was one of the funnest weekends I've had with my life. And I have a really deep connection with those people. And there wasn't that. There was people with like stage 4 diagnosis that they overcome, or just lost a loved one. There was real stories there, but everyone was so supported and uplifting. Like, I know I can reach out to any of them. And so if my mind goes to a fear-based thought, and I can feel that it starts to trigger my nervous system, what I might do is reach out to one of them because they can pull me back. Or I'll just tell my mind, like, thank you, primal brain, but I'm cared for. I've got a test coming up in a few months, which I do. So there's no sense in worrying about it right now. That's not going to serve me. I'm not going to show up and help my people to the best of my ability because I'll be either triggered or tired from being triggered. So I'm just going to put it on the night. I'm not ignoring it because I have my test, but I'm going to put it on the nightstand till the day of my test. And then I'll think about it. That's kind of what I do.
I love it. And I love especially that you didn't go black or white. Support groups trigger me. So I'm going to go out, like ignore them, but I'm going to use them. I'm going to go back into my inner wisdom to ask myself, what will serve me most?
Yeah.
So you collected a team, you continue to participate in this group, but in your own terms, where you're not reading notifications every day of people being diagnosed. I had the same experience with infertility because I was diagnosed with unexplained infertility, which means also nobody knows an answer. It's unexplained. There is not much to do. And I remember being in a Facebook support group, which gave me a lot of great information, including the doctor that I ended up seeing and who helped me conceive my son, my own child, like the guy who had all the answers for me. And I wouldn't have had that information without the people in that group. But like you, I realized hearing people vent about how painful it was. The pain that I was already feeling was not helpful. So I sort of also navigated through the systems to get the support I personally needed, where some people needed to vent. That wasn't my thing.
Yes, right. Exactly. Yeah. And so it's accepting those people are doing their thing. And yeah, same. I've met so many great people in groups. And that's how I met the Alive and Kicking people, where I got to go to that great weekend in Boston. And I did a colorectal run race, like supporting it was Get Your Rear in Gear race. And it was so much fun. Like, I have my people, and I wouldn't have met them were it not for that group, but I know my limits of the group too.
Yeah. And I love that you also had your mental practitioner helping you with the trauma. That is some of the things that I love doing with my own clients as a former therapist and now as a life coach, is combining some of those two elements, because they're both so healing and needed.
Yeah, and it's the support, like, because sometimes my husband, he's had a hard day at work. My daughter might be having a cranky day. Like, the last thing he needs to, like, he doesn't, sometimes, sometimes he's a great listener, and sometimes I know he's at his edge.
He's maxed out. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's so nice to have that practitioner to go and like talk and have someone hear me, like really hear me and feel supported in that way, and know that, okay, now when I see my husband, I don't have to like feel like I'm a burden to him to like talk about this stuff, because I did it with my practitioner. So now we can just spend quality time together,
being husband and wife.
Yes.
For me, I felt he wasn't as sensitive anymore. I was like resenting him because all these emotions towards my lack of conception or my diagnosis that he had only so much compassion for. After a while, he's like, we're talking about the same thing. And I think he had his own set of emotions. I also went back to see a psychologist when I was going through this, because it is emotionally taxing to have to reprogram your brain around a new circumstance, like it is a diagnosis. So let that also, for all of you listening, be one of the things you walk away with, that there are never too much support when you are in a moment of crisis and where you're wanting to accept something. Like, it took me 5 years to accept it. And just when I was accepting this might be that I might never be a mom naturally, biologically, my beautiful baby miracle came to say, well, actually, that was the lesson you needed to learn. So now that you learned that, here I come, mama. And so I feel that for you, I can tell the confidence you had in your team, Alison, has made it possible for you to have this confidence today, saying, like, if that was to happen again, I can handle it. And I wonder if partially is because you've got all these, supports around you.
Yeah, 100%.
Amazing. How can people get maybe there is people with Lynch listening to you right now, if they wanted to get a hold of you, or maybe people who've had rectal cancer or just got diagnosed with something similar. If they wanted to reach out to you, could they? And if so, what would be the best way to do so?
Yeah, if they go to my website, it's igniteyourwellness.com. The your is with the UR, so it's igniteyourwellness.com. My email's there, my Instagram is there. I'm on Instagram all the time. I do share my Lynch journey on there, and also business tips too, if you're interested in that.
Yes.
But yeah, like I do, because it's my life. Like I share about going to my tests and how I manage and run a business doing that at the same time. So they can find me there at the website or the gram. I'm there.
You're in the
gram. Or Facebook.
Also, head over to the show notes. All of Alison's links are there as well. Alison, I am short of words to say thank you. Honestly, I know that I get emotional, but it is so special to have beautiful human beings coming to talk out of just caring. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so honored.
My best wish and hope for you is a long-lasting, super healthy life, because you're working for it, and because the world needs to see all of you, more of you, all the time. So from my heart to yours, namaste, my friend. Thank you so much for coming. I'm so excited the universe brought us together. It's one of the gifts of being in this coaching container. I mean, right now, is to have met beautiful humans like yourself. And that you want to come and talk to my audience. That's like the gift that keeps giving. So thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody, I'll see you next Monday. See you soon. Bye bye.